welcome to Friday. If you can see past everybody in the crew here, you see up on this board, I started writing on this board. It was, Tunisia was 131, January 31st. I said Tunisia has a good possibility of being the Archduke Ferdinand moment, the moment that set the world on fire. When it happened back in World War I, nobody knew that was going to be the straw, but it was, and it just started to burn all across the world, and eventually we were in World War I. On January 31st, I said that, and I said that radicals, Islamists, communists, and socialists are all working together against Israel, capitalism, and working together to overturn stability. The world said that I was a madman for saying it. Anybody here remember what all the people say? Everybody said that was crazy. Then it all started to happen. When Egypt fell, I said, part two, protests will become contagious and they will spread. And first they will spread, sweep the Middle East, and then destabilize Europe and then the rest of the world. Those things are all verifiable. They're happening now. How does anyone know that these things can happen? Because you take people at their word, especially people who say they want to kill you. You take them at their word. And if you just listen to the radicals and the Islamists and the communists and the socialists, they will tell you what they plan on doing, but everybody puts their head in the sand. I will tell you now something that I think everybody is going to call me crazy for. Well, let me take a poll here. How many people in this audience think that it is crazy to think that Israel is now being set up as the fall guy, and a lot by our own country and our own countrymen? Anybody agree with that? Look at that. That's amazing. Israel is our ally, one of our greatest allies. And everybody, at least in this audience, thinks we're setting her up. This has been weighing on my heart an awful lot because, well, for two reasons. One, I'm a Christian, and I believe in the story of the Israelite from the beginning. And I know you stand against the Israelites, we are all going to pay for it. Take all the Bible stuff out of it, and let's just look at it with common sense. If Israel is destroyed, does it make the world a safer place or a more dangerous place? Much more dangerous. If Israel is destroyed, do you think they stop and say, I'm good, got our fill, Europe, you're good, Europe falls. After Europe falls, America falls. It may even be Israel, America. I have been looking for the voice of the person that will take a stand for Israel in governments. I can't find them. And I have decided that if no one will stand in a leadership role, then it is time for the American people to take their rightful place as the leaders and stand for Israel. No one is standing. And if we don't stand, God will not judge us kindly. I've been reading an awful lot of history over the last few years, and I have found a guy that I didn't know anything about a year ago, named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I don't want to live the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and I don't think anybody here does. But we better, or others will live the lives of those who went to concentration camps. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a guy who stood up before anybody else would and said, stop, don't you see what we're doing? And the churches in Germany, they would sing louder as the trains of Jews would go by. The churches would sing louder so they couldn't hear the cries of the Jews. We have to take a stand now before it becomes more difficult. So the point of tonight's show is I would like to encourage you in America to take a stand and know what you really believe. But I guess we should start at the beginning. First, so many Americans don't even know the history of Israel. And boy, you can't really, kind of a long history. Kind of hard to do in like 2.5 minutes, but that's why we did it in a short cartoon form. Here it is.
And now, the history of the Middle East in a couple of minutes. Chapter 1.
Around the turn of the century, the Jews decided, we need a homeland. What I'm looking for is a nice MLT, mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, and maybe, I don't know, a homeland.
So they all start an ingathering.
The Zionists are coming to reclaim the homeland.
Palestinians, who aren't really called Palestinians, they're Syrians. They're kind of wandering around, tending their flocks, walking around basically in the desert. Find themselves with a bunch of Jews there in the desert with them.
Would you like a nice MLT?
Meanwhile, back in Britain, they're starting to ask themselves,
Queenie, baby, what do we do? All these Jews are here. They're going to be starting picking fights now with the Arabs, and the Arabs aren't going to like it.
I don't know. Can't we just split the land?
Arabs don't like the idea.
Wait a minute. Who are all these people coming in trying to take all of our land? We're the Jews. And let me tell you something. You know what this place really needs? Is a nice Jewish deli. Want some blocks? Now comes the UN.
The United Nations decides, you know what? They're going to split it all up. We're going to give half of it to, quote-unquote, Palestine, which is actually Syria, and the other part to the new Jewish homeland. That way, everybody's happy.
Right.
On May 14, 1948, the Zionists declare their own state, along with the United Nations. The next day, the Palestinians, aided by the armies of Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and, whoa, Iraq, gotta love them, launched a war to prevent Jewish independence and to secure control of all of the land. Unfortunately, in that war, the Zionists not only managed to hold all the areas assigned to them by the United Nations, but seized part of the land designated for the Palestinian state as well.
In other words, they kicked ass.
Here's the thing everybody always leaves out of the history books. The other areas designated for the Palestinians by the United Nations were taken, not by the Israelis, but by Jordan and Egypt. Jordan annexed the West Bank while Egypt said, hey, Gaza's district, you're out. But don't worry. In the next episode, we're going to find out that neither Arab state allowed the Palestinians to form their own independent government in either of these areas. Those wacky Arabs.
This has been the history of the Middle East in a couple of minutes on the Glenn Beck program.
Okay, so it's a little sloppy, but you pretty much get the idea. We want to talk about this. We have several guests with us. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, he is the Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis. John Hagee, he is the Senior Pastor at Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas, and founder of Christians United for Israel. And joining from Washington is Ambassador Dory Gold, President of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and former Israeli ambassador to the UN. He just testified before a House committee about Israel's security needs. Ambassador, let me start with you. This audience, I don't think there was one person that was in dissent. This audience believes Israel is being set up by the United States, our own government. How is this looking to you, sir?
Well, right now we are facing a problem that looks like a setup, but it comes really from Europe at this point. The British, the Germans, and the French want a body called the Quartet, a multilateral body that's supposed to meet in mid-April, to issue a statement that would tear away from Israel the territorial buffers that have protected it for over 40 years in the West Bank. I'm speaking specifically about the Jordan Valley, which has been the front line of Israel's defense since that time. They want us to go back to the pre-1967 lines, what are called the 49 Armistice lines. And if that happens, Israel cannot be defended.
So you have Egypt coming out and saying that if you defend yourself, if you respond, you've already had an unbelievable tragedy. The Fogel family was killed by radical Islamists. Then also we had the biggest terror strike from Gaza, more rockets launched than any other time in the last couple of years. On the weekend, we went into Libya. Nobody seemed to cover that. And then there was another one. The terrorist strike. Israel is going to have to respond at some point. But Egypt is now saying that they will declare war on you if you respond.
Well, unfortunately, what is happening, and you were one of the first people to point this out, is that we're seeing a spread of these revolts across the Arab world. They're initially being perceived in the West as being Twitter and Facebook revolts. But notice the days in which the revolts get bad. They're Fridays, when the mosques are filled. And on those Fridays, it's the Muslim Brotherhood, which is engineering a major takeover in the Middle East. Egypt is one case. The Muslim Brotherhood was barely noticeable in Egypt when Mubarak was thrown out of power. Today, they're the major force behind change in Egypt, and they are the force that is insisting that a future Egyptian government cancel the peace treaty with Israel.
Rabbi, there was a major piece for the UN that came out and said Israel is an oppressor. It is engaging in, I believe the words genocide were in this report. And it was a major, major stone that people used to stand on against Israel. The writer of that report has just reversed himself. What is the significance of that?
Glenn, I just want to say that when you bring in Hamas as your expert witness and you depend on them to give you the testimony, the truthful testimony, how shocking is it that at some point you're going to be embarrassed? And now you have this judge, and he happens to be Jewish, which makes it even more painful for us, is saying that had he known then what he knows now, he would not have written such a report. The problem is, and you see this all the time, when someone is charged with a crime, the reversal will appear, right? Doesn't matter. You've already tainted the character. But the reversal is on a much later page. I looked at some of the front pages of papers. I didn't see the Goldstone 2 receiving as much attention as Goldstone 1.
Of course not.
So Israel has already paid a price in terms of credibility again.
Ambassador, you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I mean, Justice Goldstone came up with what I would call a blood libel against the state of Israel. He charged that the Israeli army back in 2008, 2009 intentionally killed Palestinian civilians. That is complete falsehood. Anybody who's familiar with what happened in Operation Cast Lead, the Gaza war, knows that the Israeli army provided warnings that were unprecedented to the Palestinian population. They provided leaflets, like many armies. But our intelligence services also called people's homes and said, if you have weaponry in your home, you better leave, because in about 10 minutes, our Air Force is going to destroy that home. It is a military target. Do you know of an army that takes Arabic-speaking intelligence officers and has them call the target to tell the civilians to leave?
No.
That's a country that wants to kill civilians intentionally. It was a complete lie. It was made up. And I'm glad that Justice Goldstone finally stood up and said the report he issued is untrue.
So let me ask the audience, how is it that we are taking the word of Hamas? How is it that we are taking the words here of our enemies and we are using them to point to Israel? Why? Does anybody here have an answer on, Pastor, maybe you have an answer. Why are the American people buying into this?
The American people are buying into this because they do not recognize Israel's relationship to history, to the Word of God, and to what they mean to America as a democracy. America should stand by Israel because Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel has been America's friend who votes with us more in the UN than any other nation. Israel also has a very unique relationship with a superpower that a secular society in America does not recognize, and that would be God Almighty. God has created Israel. God has said, I am the defender of Israel, for he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God has said through the prophet Joel that any nation, that would include America, who tries to divide the land of Israel or the city of Jerusalem will be brought to judgment. Therefore, it's very clear to say that the day America turns its back on Israel, God will turn its back on America.
Do you think that that it would matter that the American people haven't? Because I don't think the American people, we're watching this on the news. We're watching, and we all know. And we're thinking, did September 11th not happen? When we see the Fogel family brutally murdered, and then you have the same people out giving out candy in the streets and cake exactly the way they did on 9/11, do we not remember? These are the same people. So does it matter that it is the administration that is lying their way into this situation, no, they are lying their way into it. This is a covert op.
This is a situation where, from Morocco to Turkey, simultaneously you see these nations in revolt, all moving in the same direction. I believe that Iran, through the Islamic Brotherhood, is orchestrating all of this for the purpose of attacking Israel.
Dory, I mean, we have Turkey, Egypt, several other countries all making alliances now with Iran. Do you believe Iran is orchestrating this?
Oh, Iran definitely has its hands in a lot of the activity going on. You know, you've spoken many times about the fact that Iran is a Shiite country and many of the Arab states are Sunni countries. But what people haven't noticed is that since at least 2006, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is Sunni, has created very close ties with the Iranians. They supported the Iranians in the recent war we had in 2006. So as a result, the Iranians are able to reach out beyond the Sunni-Shiite divide and mobilize many Sunni movements on their side. And that has begun to happen.
There is something wrong, and I want to come back. We have to take a break. I want to come back. There's something wrong with Turkey. Something is happening with Turkey. And we'll get into that here in just a second. Pastor John Hagee and Ambassador Dory Golden. I was telling you that on my board over here of the radical socialists and Islamics, they're working together, and what people don't understand is they don't have to agree with each other on an outcome. They just have to agree on, we don't like this system and we want it overturned. And we were talking during the break that that's the Sunnis and the Shias. They don't agree, but...
You know, Glenn, it's interesting because Einstein said years ago, if my theory of relativity is a great success, England will say I'm a great Englishman, France will say I'm a great Frenchman. If I'm a failure, they'll all say I'm a Jew. And somehow, when it comes to Sunni and Shia, they can have all the theological differences in the world, but when you put Jew in there, we bring them together like no one else.
Isn't it exactly what happened in World War I or World War II?
World War II.
World War II, Russia and Germany, at first, the communists and the fascists were together, and part of it, anti-capitalist, anti-Jew. And then they figure out, well, once we kill all those, then we'll fight each other. We'll see who gets the world.
And also, I think what goes on today is there's this moral equivalence. It's obscene. It's immoral. The arsonist and the firefighter. You hurl a rocket at Israel. Right. Israel responds, and they're culpable for the response, more so than the person who hurls the rocket.
Dory, how much sleep do you lose in Israel trying to, I mean, because you must feel the possibility, at least, of a global pounce on Israel. How much sleep do you guys lose?
Well, let me characterize the problem. Israel is a very strong country. The Jewish people are not in a position that they were in the 1930s. We're able to defend ourselves. And by the way, the United States is a very strong country. The point of weakness is a moral weakness. It's a moral weakness coming out of Europe, which puts pressure on us today, and to some extent puts pressure on the U.S. As you started your show, you pointed out that Israel was being set up. And the point I'm trying to make, and I tried to make a little earlier, is that if you strip Israel of the defenses that it has to protect itself from this regional tsunami of radical Islam, then you leave Israel exposed. That is why we must assure something which American presidents have guaranteed Israel in writing in the past, that whatever happens in the peace process, whatever happens in the region, at the end of the day, Israel is entitled to defensible borders, and it must protect those defensible borders so that it can protect itself. And we should not allow a European initiative to force Israel to give up those territorial barriers that have protected it for more than 40 years. That is what is happening now.
When Shimon Peres was in Washington, it was again awkward, I thought. When Benjamin Netanyahu came in, it wasn't our good friend from Israel. It was an awkward time. I don't even think there was a joint press conference. Shimon Peres, he was out in the front yard of the White House giving a press conference himself. How would you describe our relationship with Israel? How would you describe the temperature in the room at the White House with Israel?
Look, you can get into the tactical minutia, and I understand why one gets drawn to it. It's dramatic, but fundamentally, regardless of this choreography, the U.S. and Israel are very close allies. Probably one of the most intimate allies. I recall President Kennedy saying to Golda Meir in 1962 that we want a relationship with Israel like the relationship we have with Great Britain. That's a very special relationship. I recall the head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence in 1986 saying to the New York Times that Israel supplies intelligence to the United States the equivalent of 5 CIAs. The U.S. helps Israel, Israel helps the United States. And sometimes there are officials in Washington or elsewhere or in Europe who want to send some kind of statement by this kind of manipulation or that. But we are allies, and just let's keep the big picture in mind.
Make the case that, because there are a lot of people, because there's something happening in America, that Americans are beginning to disconnect with both parties. And they are becoming much more like the founders, some. And the founders would have said, we're friends to everybody and enemies to nobody. We mind our own business. America doesn't have the money or resources anymore to be the policeman of the world. Explain to somebody what it means to stand by Israel. We have to go over and fight wars with you, or what does it mean?
That is precisely the point. Israel never asked the United States to risk the lives of American troops to defend it. We don't want to be West Germany in the Cold War. We don't want to be South Korea with American troops deployed along the demilitarized zone. There are people today who are suggesting that Israel should get out of that great strategic buffer that protects it, the Jordan Valley, and put NATO forces there. Put the 82nd Airborne there. And we're complimented by the thought. But we don't want that to happen. We don't want American troops or any other troops defending Israel. We want to fulfill the doctrine of the founder of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, of self-reliance, that Israel defends itself by itself. And what we ask from the United States is diplomatic support so we can maintain that position.
I have to tell you, I love you as an ally. With an answer like that, I love you as an ally. I wish our own citizens would say, we'll defend ourselves and we'll take care of ourselves and stand on our own 2 feet. Rabbi.
Well, I remember Golda Meir, and I'm sure Dory does and everyone else here does. She said, when someone offered, well, America will protect you, she said, there's only one problem. By the time you get here, we won't be here. And I think what Dory says must be stated. And then look at Lebanon. Look at the Lebanese-Israeli border. Do you remember how the UN arranged for a ceasefire, and there was going to be the de-arming, right, demilitarization? And now you have more missiles there than before the ceasefire. So God forbid you got to rely on someone else to protect you.
Why, Pastor Hagee? And we'll get into some other things, but let me kind of go off of the same principle. Then what is Israel in need of? If they don't need that, what is it that they need?
I think that what Israel would appreciate from America is a president that would be vocally and visibly firm on the fact that they have the right to exist, the right to defensible borders, and the right to defend themselves against their enemies.
Okay, well, there are a lot of people working on that, but it's going to take about 2 years. What is it? What is it? And Dory, maybe I should ask you, what is it that we can do as American people?
Well, let me raise just one other point that's connected to all of this, and with Pastor Hagee there and the rabbi, I have to point this out. That's the future of Jerusalem. Under Israel, Jerusalem is open to all faiths. You know, if you look what's been going on in the Middle East the last 10, 15 years, you see that Buddhist statues in the Bamiyan Valley were exploded by the Taliban. You see churches in Pakistan and Iraq coming under attack. You see Egyptian Coptic Christians being assaulted by their neighbors. Only a free and democratic Israel will protect Jerusalem for all faiths. Otherwise, this anti-religious trend, this trend to assault non-Muslim believers that's occurring across the Middle East, will come to the heart of Jerusalem. I've said this to American secretaries of state. I've said this to many U.S. officials. We need your backing to keep Jerusalem united under the sovereignty of Israel.
I will tell you that I have been to Israel, and if you have not been there, it is one of the most amazing experiences you will ever have. It's the size of a postage stamp. I think we have aircraft carriers bigger than Israel. And when you approach the Temple Mount, things start to become very, very clear to you. And as you walk around the old walled city, I will tell you that it became very clear to me that there is one group of people that can live with each other and leave their sacred spaces alone. When you go into what was the room of the Last Supper, and you see that it is all mosque and Islamic writing on the walls, but it is in the hands of, if I'm not mistaken now, the Christians, but that has been left, those markings have been left now. There is one religion that seems to try to erase the others in the old city of Jerusalem, and that must not be allowed to happen. Back in a second. About Israel and the fact that you know, look, you say whatever you want. I don't really care anymore what people say about me. I am speaking what I believe is the truth. Do your own homework. You disagree, I can't tell you how I pray every day I'm wrong. But I think Israel is being set up by many in our own country and in this administration. It doesn't look good, and I see a trend of a couple of things. And Dory, if you don't mind, I just want to run down a couple of things. May 15th is what in Israel?
May 15th?
May 15th.
This year? I don't know when Independence Day is, but are you making reference to that?
May 15th. Yeah, historically, May 15th is an important day for Independence Day, right?
Yes, of course, of course. We use a Hebrew date. That's why I was confused for a moment. Go ahead.
I didn't bring my Jewish calendar. I usually use that at home.
With the VO.
So May 15th. There are several things that are happening in May. One is the flotilla, right around that time period. Facebook had one of their big mass protests happening, I think it was on May 15th, and then that was taken down, and another one that was to march and take the land from Israel. And this is what is on the website. Judgment Day will be brought upon us only once the Muslims have killed all the Jews. And then there's another date that keeps going around, and that is in September. I fear there is something happening here in May and in September. Am I crazy on this, or? Feel free to say yes, dates. Everybody does.
I'll give you 3 dates. April, as I said before, the quartet wants to determine that Israel must withdraw to the 67 lines, which in Jerusalem would leave the entire old city, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Temple Mount, and the Western Wall on the Palestinian side, ultimately in the hands of Hamas. So that's April. May, as you correctly point out, is another Turkish flotilla. Now the flotilla is something which we saw in the past is not just Turkish. On the Mavi Marmara, the main ship last year, there were members of the Muslim Brotherhood from all over the Middle East.
We also have
so that's a second element.
People from the radical left here in America as well.
Correct, the Red-Green Alliance. And then you get to September, And what you see Palestinian diplomatic strategy being today is to avoid negotiations with Israel, despite the concessions we've made, and to go for a unilateral declaration of statehood. That could explode the Middle East.
Let me ask you this. Am I right to say, either of you guys, all three of you guys, are dates important in the Middle East, especially to the Islamic world, to Islamic terrorists? Dates are important, right? September 2011. It's what? The 10th anniversary, right, of 9/11. September 9/11. It seems to me that might be an important month for us to watch and see what happens. You were going to say something, Pastor, before I got up?
Just tagging on to what the ambassador said, if the United States of America allows the United Nations to dictate that there is going to be a Palestinian state, then all of the democratic nations in the world are at risk. Because if they, the United Nations, are permitted to dictate to Israel that this Palestinian state now exists, Israel is a sovereign and free democracy. They have democratically elected leaders. And if we allow that democracy to be dictated to by the United Nations, why do we think as Americans that the United Nations will not in turn try to dictate to us?
Well, I don't think anybody does think that. I mean,
they can say, look, you got California from the Spaniards, give it back. You got Texans from the Mexicans, give it back. You got Florida from the Seminole Indians, give it back. Where does that stop?
Okay, hang on, I got to take a quick break. I was reading this honestly, until about 4 o'clock in the morning. How old is this, Pastor?
4 years old.
This is an important book for you to read in defense of Israel. Read this book and find out where you stand. I stand with Israel. Back in a minute. To stay with me over the summer. We have a lot going on, and I hope to be talking to you about some things specifically that you can do about Israel, and I would ask that you would help us make this a global movement. We're with Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, Pastor John Hagee, and Ambassador Dory Gold, and I want to go to Barbara from Vermont. Barbara.
Hi.
Hi. You have a question?
Yes, I do, and it's for the rabbi. I was wondering, I sense a disconnect between American Jews and the Israeli Jews, and I was wondering if you can explain that and if you see a change happening.
I think there is a gap, and I think, frankly, we have done a bad job, many of us in positions of leadership, in terms of exciting our young people about Israel. I have a son who's 23 years old. If all I talk to him about is victimhood, is pain, is suffering, he is going to say to me, Dad, why should I be Jewish? Is there any joy in being Jewish? And I think one of the mistakes we make is not talking enough about this Jewish pride, about the accomplishments of Israel. I tell you, we have friends here. We need friends. Pastor Hagee has gone to Israel 27 times, 27 trips, not to mention all of the other support he generates. Glenn Beck speaks out for Israel. We need to form stronger alliances, but we need to get that message across that Israel has done much, and we need to stand with Israel in a positive way, not just the painful part, but the positive part.
I love this. I'm known as an Jew-loving anti-Semite. I don't even know how that's even possible. I mean, I am targeted by the left and the Jewish left like nobody's business. Where is that split? What happens?
I wish I could give you a rational answer. Maybe we need to have mediations here between you and the left. Maybe I'll be the negotiator for you. I don't, but I do think we are not making a good enough case as to the strength of Israel and the spirit of Israel. I can tell you this. I met recently with the Japanese ambassador, and he said to me, I want to thank you and thank your people. You were one of the first countries to respond to the tsunami and the earthquake in Japan. Now, how many people know that in our community that Israel was there with all of the problems besieging us. Someone said we have more problems per square inch than any other,
Oh my
country in the
God.
world, right?
Oh, yeah.
And yet we're there. We're there for Turkey. We're there for all the other countries. We don't get that message across enough. And I think, therefore, people don't respond enough.
Let me ask you this, Pastor, that it is amazing. Is there any other, in history, is there any other country that went away, played such a huge role, went away, was prophesized it would go away, and then come back and play a role? It's the size of a postage stamp. And really, you might as well put the axis of the earth right through the Temple Mount. The whole world spins, it seems. Has there ever been any other country like this?
No, and it's the size of a postage stamp right now. I'm telling you that in time,
Yeah.
whenever Messiah comes, and the rabbi and I disagree on who he is, but when Messiah
I want to
comes,
be there with you.
Yeah.
We'll vouch for each other. It's good.
one of us, yeah,
Back in
it's
just a
going to be
second.
a great nation.
Back in a minute. Final minutes here with Rabbi Potasnik, Pastor Hagee, and Ambassador Dory Gold. And let me go to Kenneth from Florida.
Yeah, I had a question basically for anybody. Other than pray for Israel, is there anything that we can do to make Obama change his course on Israel?
Let me start with the ambassador. Ambassador.
Well, I don't want to get into American domestic politics as a former Israeli diplomat. However, I will say there are fundamental principles that have been part of American policy for many years, and I outlined some of them. We don't need to have the territories of the Bible, although the Bible is our source of inspiration. It's a source of the inspiration of the pioneers who established Israel. But we are entitled to defensible borders to keep our country safe.
I will tell you.
We need a firm commitment on that, and I believe that our protection of Jerusalem is not just good for the Jewish people or the people of Israel, it's good for the world. Let's keep Jerusalem whole.
Dory, thank you very much. I will tell you this. I talked to Benjamin Netanyahu a few years ago when I was on the other network, and he said to me, we have a right to live, and that is true. Rabbi.
We teach our young people the difference between decency, indecency, evil and good. I simply say, look at what's going on in the world, look at Israel, stand with the good, stand with the decent, and let's stand together.
It's amazing how clear it is. Is it clear to everybody, good and evil? And are you amazed? Do you stand next to people and say, what the heck is wrong with you?
Yes.
Pastor
In February 2006, we organized Christians Unite for Israel, which is a national Christian organization that now has over 600,000 leaders who once a year go to Washington, D.C. to interact with every senator and congressman on behalf of Israel. July 18th, 19th, and 20th, we're going to be in Washington. You are going to be our speaker on the 19th for a night to honor Israel. We're having nights to honor Israel all over the United States, 40 events every month across the United States to benefit Israel, practical ways to impact public policy in behalf of the state of Israel. Is putting shoe leather to your faith.
Would worth your time, America. I will be there. I will tell you that he didn't tell me that American politicians would be there. Otherwise, I'm not sure.
They're not coming.
Oh,
No,
there.
we're
Then I'll honor my agreement.
Now they know you're going to be there. They won't be there.
We're going there the next day.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute.